We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
G'day, and welcome to another live recording of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we
break the molds of modern manhood to prove that there is more than one way to be a man.
What we're doing is simplifying manhood, aren't we, Boysen?
No, we are making it far more complex.
I disagree. I always love putting you on the spot with that intro.
Yes, I know.
Well, we are coming to you today, the two of us. I know our format is generally interviewing incredible guests that we've been fortunate to have over the 180 some episodes that we've had. But what we are doing are bringing just real life, real world conversations and discussions to the table that Boysen and I are experiencing. And in our combined 30 something years of men's work, I believe there's some juice to pull from the stone here. So with that being said, we're going to talk about happiness today. In fact, the art and science of happiness. Boysen, you happy, bro?
Right now, yes. Yeah, I have happiness right now.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. So I have a little essay here that I'll dive into, and then we'll discuss it. But this comes from I've been doing Arthur Brooks' Art and Science of Happiness workshop. Shout out to Mike Patterson, friend of the podcast, frequent guest. Where he's been gnawing on my ear for a year now, being like, do it. It's amazing. And he references it all the time. And me and my superior wisdom is like, happiness is kind of airy fairy. You know, this work, we talk about deep stuff. We talk about hurt and pain and shadow. And I'm like, well, why do we do all that deep work for? What do we do it for? Except to enjoy a lot of the good stuff that comes from it. So I'll share this now, and as you listen in, see what comes up for you around happiness. So let's talk about happiness. You know, the thing we chase but never quite hold on to. The thing we've been told is the rush of a touchdown, the high of a promotion, or the glow of a Saturday night beer with the boys. But we've got it wrong. Happiness isn't a feeling. Saying happiness is a feeling is like saying that Thanksgiving is just the smell of the Thanksgiving dinner being cooked. It's so much more than that. It's just evidence of something real cooking in the background. Happiness is deeper. It's satisfaction, the reward after the grind. It's enjoyment, the pleasure you share with people you love. And most importantly, it's meaning, a sense of direction, not a destination. Here's the trap though. We confuse happiness with envy. Scrolling through socials, seeing his car, her house, their vacations, we think if I just had that, I'd feel whole. But nah, bro, that's not the game. Happiness isn't found in someone else's highlight reel. So where is it found then? Well, thanks to the incredible works of Arthur Brooks, who in fact, he's been teaching at Harvard for a number of years. He got asked by Oprah to co-author a book on how to build an outstanding life. And they coin these 4 areas that when breathed life into, bring forth happiness. That is faith, family, friends, and work that matters. Now, when we talk about faith, I'm not talking like a pew and a sermon, though if that's your thing, go for it. Faith is the art of zooming out. It's walking alone in the woods without your phone. It's reading something that expands your mind and challenges your paradigms. It's realizing the world doesn't revolve around you and being okay with that. Which leads me to family. Now, this is a big one. Call your mum. Hug your kid. Tell your partner you appreciate them. Not tomorrow, not later, now. And for those of us who haven't had the fortune to grow up in families that are still united or at least still have connection, create it. Find it elsewhere. It's important. Friends. I love this distinction. Not the deal friends, but the real friends. The distinction here is deal friends are friends that you need something from. They're even friends of convenience. Perhaps it's your buddy at work. But you got to ask yourself, if we didn't work together, would we actually make the time or the effort to get together and continue this relationship? When we talk about real friends, and Boysen, in our previous episode, I very affectionately called you one of my useless friends. Yeah, useless friend. The ones who are useless. Useless in the sense that I don't need anything from you. You don't need anything from me. We could be in a canoe going down a river. We could be sitting by a fire. We could be sitting at a bus stop, and just being in each other's presence just fills our souls. Who are those friends in your life that just you can't get enough of? The ones you tell your deepest, darkest secrets to. Okay. An hour a week with them, talking real talk, no texts, not memes, actual conversations. And lastly, work. We're not talking about a flashy title or a big paycheck. We're talking about creating value, lifting people up, doing something that serves a purpose bigger than your own ego, but that also rewards you, that shows, that something that you can claim as, yeah, this is like, I am worthy of this. So here's the plan, if I could break it down. Tomorrow, wake up and put a deposit into your happiness 401k. And if you're Australian listening, you're a superannuation. Okay. 15 minutes dedicated to reading, meditating, stretching your mind, tapping into that faith. Calling someone you love, just for the sake of telling them that you love them. Step towards your friendships and nurture them. Call your friends, check in on them. And then lastly, ask yourself, am I earning my success in serving others? What am I doing to provide value in the world? And am I being rewarded for that? If you can end your day with this checklist and ask yourself, did you do it? Did you not? This is a great way to track if you're depositing into your happiness account. Happiness isn't flashy. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It's found in faith, family, friends, and meaningful work. Not in trophies, not in followers, or the envy-inducing photos. Happiness is love. Full stop. Now go find it. Oh, the end.
Oh, I was there. I was just letting it sit. Nice.
So that's been a cool one to dive into for me, because I was talking to my wife about it. Because it's funny, previously she'd be like, I'd tell her I'm doing a happiness project or like a course like this, and she'd be like, why aren't you happy? What's wrong? Don't we have it great? And now it's so cool, kind of on the same page, where she knows that, we call ourselves abundance magnets, and we know that we're manifesting, and she's listening to The Secret right now. And it's a case of things are great. And let's keep investing in that. Let's keep investing in that happiness and continuing to refine, saying yes to the right things, saying no to the wrong things. So yeah, that's what I got for you.
Thank you very much. So Brandon asked me before we started recording, I'm not familiar with Arthur Brooks. I am familiar, however, with another Harvard thing, which was the Harvard Grant Study. It's actually got a longer name now. The longest longitudinal study of men and life satisfaction and longevity ever conducted. And the core final message of the Harvard Grant Study was what? Do you remember this, Brandon? The satisfaction in your relationships. And it seems like a lot of what the happiness about that is really in investing in and creating and building with effort, with work, with care, with choice, your relationships, so that is where we find that satisfaction. Those are the folks who pursue that real happiness. not transactional happiness, not, sugar happiness, not candy happiness.
Yeah. The next high, the next high, the next high.
Right.
I would like, if there was a way to graph happiness, I would like my graph to look like a steady, slow incline. Whereas in my 20s, I wanted the peaks, but then came the valleys, and then I wanted the peaks, and then came the valleys. Nah, man, I want it to be consistent. Just a slow build that compounds over time. And we know that from people on their deathbed, right? They don't talk about their achievements. They talk about who was with them on the way.
Yes.
Who they shared the journey with.
Faith's an interesting piece of that. The first piece, his first thing. So talk a little bit more about it. Fill that out and how it's playing in your life.
Well, interestingly, so one of the exercises in the course is you have to kind of rank yourself on faith, family, and friends. And faith was my weakest by far. Now, I'm not a religious person. My wife is Christian. My mother-in-law is Christian. My father's Christian. I don't identify as Christian, but I'm not, my words, I'm not naive enough to think that I know what is and what isn't out there. I don't. And so for me, I've always interpreted faith as something that's come to me in, various plant medicine experiences I've had where I have actually connected with my higher self, which is the part of me that is just like kind of how I look at my inner child, just perfect. Isn't living in story, isn't living in judgment, just totally recognize the beauty in everything. And so that gives me kind of an aspirational identity to work towards. And so when I think of faith, I think of, okay, so, how am I challenging the stories and the judgments and the paradigms that box me in? And researching different faiths, different philosophies, I'm pretty deep in the Stoics right now, has been a great outlet for that. And that's kind of how I scratch that itch.
Nice. Thank you for that. Yeah. Bigger. It's the bigger. Yeah. Thank you. So I'm also not a person who is practitioner of any religious practice, and I've been a meditator for a long time. And there is a aspect I know if I've gone too long without, getting my practice of being on the cushion in order. And that is happiness. There is like deep in the belly settledness in my body when I put that effort into making it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's also Joseph Campbell kind of stuff coming in here about follow your bliss.
Yeah.
Right. And that gets boiled down into that sugary chase your dopamine kind of thing as well. But no, that's not what Joseph Campbell was talking about.
No. And that's a distinction that, that Brooks talks a lot about is, it's not pleasure.
Right.
We're not seeking pleasure here because too much of pleasure can result in addiction. Right. It's not about that. It's really about the meaning behind what it is that whatever that bliss is. Right. There's a purpose behind it. There's something deeper that comes with the pursuit. And it's not, the bliss isn't something that I judge I'm ever going to capture. It's not the pursuit, but it's the journey towards it that's the most rewarding part. If we're to get cliche here, it's the journey, really. Because like, what if I was obsessed with my daughter getting into the best school? Let's just say the best university. And I stress and claw and cry and save and charge towards promotions to be able to afford the amount of money, or I push her in her studies to be able to get into that school. Okay, we get there. She gets into, let's just say, Yale or whatever. At what cost?
Right.
What were the years like leading up to it? Is the juice worth the squeeze if that's the cost? Or is there an alternative approach that comes from a surplus of joy and happiness?
And is there middle way-ish? Is there a middle way in there too, right? Because one of the things that brings human beings happiness is when we are performing at that edge of what's possible for us, right? So there's a distinction between forcing things, and challenging ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and so the one thing he talks about is, let me pull up here because I don't want to get it wrong. So this is the happiness equation that Brooks has coined, and it's really neat. So I'm going to pull it up because here we go. Happiness equals enjoyment plus satisfaction plus meaning.
Nice.
And enjoyment purely is the joy that you experience from what it is that you're doing. It's from doing things that we enjoy. Satisfaction is the feeling of gratification we get from working towards goals that challenge us. So you talk about challenge. It's that, you did CrossFit. At the end of a WOD, a workout of the day, that halfway through you're going, there is no way by the end of this hour, I'm going to finish this. But you do. And that feeling of like, oh man, I earned that. Right? Or getting the degree, the sleepless nights and cramming for studies while working a job, like that satisfaction that comes from, it's not the satisfaction of the piece of paper, it's what you had to do to get it. And lastly, the meaning, the feeling that our lives have purpose and significance and that things happen for a reason. I think that's also ties into the faith piece, is that everything happens for a reason, good or bad. I love the phrase, now this. So something happens, comes across my desk, and I'm like, no, I wouldn't have chosen this path.
Right.
But now this.
Here it is. Yes. Thank you.
Here it is. I have 3 maxims I want to give.
Yeah.
These are really, really cool. And kind of black and white, which I really appreciate when we talk about kind of superfluous topics. Happiness, joy, right? So here they are. Number 1, Mother Nature does not care if you are happy. Happiness doesn't come naturally by simply following instincts or chasing worldly rewards, money, power, pleasure. These external pursuits, though alluring, are designed for survival and reproduction, not happiness. That's our job, to survive and reproduce. And guess what? Mother Nature would have it, after we've reproduced, piss off. Die. You're taking up space, right? So Mother Nature's pretty cold. But true and lasting happiness comes from cultivating faith, meaningful relationships, and purposeful work. So that's another piece where I think the faith comes in, is that there is a meaning to this, or whatever meaning I ascribe.
Ascribe, yeah.
Yeah. So the second maxim, lasting happiness comes from habits, not hacks. And I love this one. Quick fixes or happiness hacks can improve your emotional state temporarily, but don't lead to enduring happiness. Eating that cake. Oh, I'm happy when I'm eating it. I'm happy in the anticipation. Even happy maybe after I eat it. But if I keep eating cake, that's going to lead to unhappiness. Sustainable happiness requires mindful, daily habits that strengthen relationships, deepen wisdom, and add meaning to life. So it's the little things done daily. Those prescriptions we gave at the end of my little spoken word essay there, which is call your friends, call your mum. All right? Make sure you're saying yes to things in your work that bring meaning. Happiness involves effort and commitment to practices that enhance enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose.
Now, are those maxims from Arthur Brooks or are those from you?
They're from Arthur Brooks.
Cool.
Yeah, so he's been writing for the New Yorker, I believe. He's done over 100 articles. He's like the residing happiness expert. So it's really cool. And I believe it's the New Yorker. I could be wrong. But this comes from one of his articles. The last maxim, which is I think a nice little bow to tie on our conversation around this. Happiness is love. The happiest people prioritize love of family, friends, meaningful work, and possibly the divine. Love is a decision and a commitment, characterized by willing the good of the other.
Mm.
It's giving a hug, not to get a hug, but just to give a hug. Happiness grows more from how much love you give than how much you receive. A key principle: happy people love people and use things, while unhappy people use people and love things.
Oof.
I'll repeat that for the people in the back. Happy people love people and use things, while unhappy people use people and love things.
Oof.
Mm.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Another equation he uses is it's not about wanting things external to what you have. The equation is have divided by wants, meaning, do you want what you already have? So when you work on your bike, are you thinking, man, if only I had these shocks, if only I had these gears, if only I had this hub wheel? Or are you going, man, this bike's awesome. Sure, it could use some upgrades, but I'm so grateful to have this bike.
Yes, and don't wedge me into that mountain bike bro culture. This is a road bike. I don't have shocks.
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry, I forgot that. Bro culture. Excuse me.
Mountain bike bro culture.
Oh my god, you elite road cyclist, Boysen.
Thank you. The word that obviously comes in for me here that hasn't been said out loud is gratitude, right? The wanting what you have, and in all of these pieces, right, that the reflection of love is gratefulness.
Mm-hmm. And a conversation I had with my wife this morning, which is really cool. I'm glad you bring that up. Gratitude practices for me and Christine as well have been kind of empty recently because we're finding we don't need to write it down. It's walking through our living room going, man, look where we live.
Right. Yeah.
It's walking in the woods behind our house and going like, dude, this is awesome. Seeing Bindi just healthy and happy and running amok. It's like, I don't need to write this down. So I think it's a necessary practice when trying to gain perspective, especially when like the storms are blowing through and it's a pretty rough season of life. So I'm certainly never going to discard that exercise. But when there's that abundance of happiness, it's like the gratitude's kind of like it's a software program that's just kind of running in the background.
Nice.
Yeah.
What more needs to be said about happiness?
No, I can't think of anything. I ran out of notes.
Listeners, we like getting feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So let us know. What else has gotten you excited, hooked on, illuminated about happiness, joy, satisfaction, meaning, bliss?
And what do you want to hear more on this show? What kind of conversations, what kind of topics? Because these little essays, I mean, researching it was just so phenomenal. I mean, it led me to purchasing the course, and now that's going to have an impact. So if it wasn't for Patterson constantly talking about this dude and his work, I wouldn't have done anything about it. And so for you listening out there, if there are topics you want us to cover, then that can send us down our rabbit holes and we can come present these little short essays to you and have fun discussions about it.
Fun. Nice.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Brandon.
Hey, my pleasure, man. So this has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there is more than one way to be a man. And yes, men are allowed all the emotions, including happiness.
Everyone, go feel it.
Lots of love. See you next week. This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. We have been your hosts, Boysen, Hodgson, and myself, Brandon Clift, and we want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. If you want to find out more about today's guests and support them in their mission, you can find links to them in the show notes. Now, if you have found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, we are always grateful for a rating and review of the show on iTunes. Now, above all else, we've got to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you have made it possible for us to let men all over the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if something in this episode has touched you, then perhaps it is the call to action to get involved in men's work. With live trainings happening constantly and in-person trainings happening all over the world, the Mankind Project definitely has something for you. Now, if you've enjoyed the music in this episode and all of our episodes, be sure to check out Jim Donovan and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. And lastly, just know, what it means to me to be a man is completely different than what it means for you. That is the beauty of this journey. So if you are looking for guidance, support, and community as you begin to unpack and dive deeper into your men's work journey, then you know where to find us. Same place, same time, next week. Lots of love. We'll see you then.
Hey, it's Boysen here with the Mankind Podcast. We are closing in on 100 5-star reviews of this podcast, and we have a goal. Brandon and I want to get to 250 5-star reviews. So help us out, will you? Please go to the Mankind Podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a review. Thank you. Hey, it's Boysen. On the Mankind Podcast, we've brought some incredible guests on to talk about the importance of doing the work to improve our mental and emotional health. And here's the truth. Multiple times over the last 25 years, I've had the help of one-on-one work with some amazing therapists. For me, for my wife, for both of us as adoptive parents, and for our kids. The Mankind Project and Men's Group, though awesome, are not a substitute for professional mental health support. And so I'm thrilled that the Mankind Podcast now has BetterHelp as a sponsor for the show. BetterHelp works online. It asks you what you're working on and then matches you for live one-on-one sessions with a licensed therapist, someone trained to work with you, listen, and offer helpful insights. I'm using BetterHelp. It's super easy, and I like what I'm getting. If getting one-on-one support in the comfort of your own space feels like a good direction for you, I invite you to check it out. Go to the link in the show notes or betterhelp.com/mankind. And if you sign up, you'll get 10% off your first month of therapy.